My name's Graham Odds. I'm the head of UX design at a company called Scott Logic. For those of you who don't know us, we're a software consultancy working predominantly in financial services. If you want to find out more about us, we've got a stand outside. Enough plugging, on with the talk. So I guess an important thing about what I said there is that, so I'm head of UX design. Way back when, I was technical, but I'm not going to talk about a technical thing here, per se. But a big reason I moved towards design and away from the technical is it's basically my life revolves around one question, this question. I guess the inner 3-4-year-old in me has never gone away, and I just like to ask why about practically everything. And one of the things I started asking why about recently was why are desktop apps so big? I'm going to pick on Outlook, but everything I'm saying here really does apply to practically every desktop application out there. But here's Outlook. It's email. It kind of tries to take up a huge amount of my screen, not with a very interesting email here, because I didn't want to give you all an insight into my day-to-day life, just that I like to ask the question why. But if I wanted to make it take less space, I can't make it any smaller than that. It's still pretty big. If you compare it to the same app, this is my phone being mirrored here, but if I look at Outlook on my phone, that's the same thing, but a lot smaller. Why can't the desktop app do that? Why can't it just be a little thing on the side? Now, it turns out, like most desktop applications, I can sort of get there if I have to be the designer. So I can sit there and I can say, I don't want that panel, and I don't want the bar at the top, and I don't want the ribbon thing. And now I've got a sort of lame version of what I had on my mobile phone there, but I still can't make it any smaller. But I've had to be the designer. Why do I have to be the designer, other than, it's my job? Why as the user do I have to be the designer? Why can't it do this magic smaller thing? And it's very commonplace on websites. Here's a website we built recently with Next Group, and it's this sort of filtering mechanism with this magic loop in the middle, and then if I resize it right down, it changes quite drastically. Still has exactly the same functionality, but it's small now. That works beautifully on this website. But if I look at the web version of Outlook, not so beautiful. This is what happens when you put desktop mindset into the browser. Right. So why can't this stuff just magically happen for me? Why do I have to be the designer? Why I have to set all these settings and change everything? Why no automagic? I love automagic. I guess the facetious answer is that Elon Musk has only just started his venture of interfacing with brains. Go and check it out, it's fantastic. But he's only just started, so he hasn't cracked that one yet. A more genuine answer is that the typical tooling we use on desktop, the typical technologies, just kind of don't really do this stuff very well, or they don't make it very easy to do. So we just don't do it. We never really thought about it. So what I'm talking about here, really, it's about this magic thing called context, right? It's not just that I want things to be smaller and bigger. What I really want is I want my tools to adapt to the context that I'm in. I want them to be context aware. And just to give you an example of what I mean here, imagine this is different traders. Maybe it's the same trader. They might all be doing trading, or at least looking at their order book or something like that. But the context where they're doing exactly that same action is totally different. The guy commuting, different mindset, different context to come to the order book than the kind of, maybe it's a management guy who's just looking at his trading team going, or the guy down on the floor actually having, in amongst all that hustle and bustle, the noise and the markets moving, he's trying to keep an eye on his order book. It's the same thing, but totally different contexts. Now, the way we the high ideal, the way we try and tackle this as far as design goes is a thing called responsive design, which is a grand way of saying we'd like our technology to respond to the context of use. I mean, they really went all out on that name to obfuscate it all. But when we think of responsive design, lots of people just think it's about making things smaller or narrower and down onto the smartphone. It's more than that. It can be about space and location and all sorts of other things as well. So here's a tool we built with a client a few years ago, and I want you to look at the totals widget down there in the middle. As you see it in its current state, it's got a few big numbers. If I play the video, what we should see is this is being moved. Now it's been put somewhere where there's more space. Suddenly it's got more information. They've full screened it. Wow, suddenly it's giving me loads more information. The context of that widget is changing. I'm starting to drill into it and wanting to find out more and more. That's responsive design. So I mentioned this thing about the web. Now, why I like the web and responsive design so much is HTML5 and CSS and all that jazz, it's actually embracing responsive design as a kind of a first-class citizen. It's part of the mindset and it's part of the tooling. Specifically, media queries and CSS are the obvious thing to point to for responsive design. For those of you who don't know media queries, they're kind of a way in your CSS to, I guess, put conditional styling and layout based on the context. So the current implementation of media queries, that context you can question is mostly about sort of window size and orientation, which isn't necessarily that powerful. But there are specs coming through for being able to do media queries around the light level, or whether I've got a touch device or a keyboard device, or all sorts of crazy things like that. I guess when Elon Musk gets his Neuralink thing going, it'll be able to do a media query about whether or not you've got whatever the thing is I plug into my brain going on there. But what's so great about this technology is that with containers like Electron and OpenFin, we're bringing all of that technology down onto the desktop. We're bringing the mindset, that whole idea of responsive design being a first-class citizen, onto the desktop with it as well. So I've got a little example of that going on. Now, we saw a little bit of earlier in the Finsample stuff that was being shown off there, but I wanted to show you a slightly artificial application I created. But it's a sort of consumerish facing FX trading app, let's say. At the top, we've got a trade ticket of sorts, and then we've got a blotter, because you always have to have a blotter. Everything's about blotters. And what becomes interesting is this is like taking up half my screen, and I kind of, I'm not a hardcore trader. I'd like to take up the rest of my screen with Excel because I'm maybe in a finance team or something like that. So I'd like this to take up less space. And as I start to resize here, I've got this set up so that it's changing the columns for me as I resize. So it drops the least relevant information. Now, I've guessed at what's least relevant based on my interactions with users who actually might use something like this. You see it keeps going down and keeps going down. Suddenly we get narrow enough that the whole thing's not a blotter anymore. It's sort of like a Twitter feed. Now I could shove this over on the right-hand side and I can take up the rest of the screen with other stuff. But it goes even further. It's not just about width. As I said, it's not just about narrow. Maybe it's about height. So as I make this thing smaller, it squeezes up. But eventually I just go, well, you probably don't want the blotter anymore. You made this too small. I've taken exactly that same application, that same code set, and I've got a tiny little trading ticket just in the top corner there. All just responsive, all just using these first classes and technologies. Now, those of you who have kind of know media queries a bit and spotted there's quite a lot of sort of independent responsive behavior going on as things disappeared at different sizes. You'll know that media queries are not great at modularity. Because they're always looking at the whole screen, the context of the screen. If you're building components, you have to start to take into account paddings of parents' components and all sorts of nastiness like that. And I was going to show you the code of when I implemented this with basic media queries, but I thought this summed it up better because it's horrendous. It really, really is. But I discovered this thing. There is a concept called container queries. Same idea as media queries, but based on any element you want to in that entire page. So suddenly I can actually worry about just my mini context rather than the big picture context necessarily. Of course, this is a web technology, so it's a work in progress, and as it stands, no browsers support it. But also, it is a web technology, so there's loads of little libraries for different frameworks that kind of fudge that and let me use it anyway, which is what I had in the demo there. But it means you can create these wonderful self-contained reusable components so that I can just worry about that trade ticket. I just built that trade ticket in total isolation. Could have dropped that into some other application and it would still have all that responsive behavior based on the size that it cares about, not the big application. But I'm getting very technical here. I apologize. I want to just roll back to the big picture here. The big picture is we mustn't forget that users need to focus on their intent, not the tool. They shouldn't be sitting trying to configure their application. They shouldn't be trying to worry about which window, where's what, how do I make it bigger or smaller. It just should be magic. That's the word we need to come back to. And that means that for us, the people who make these tools, we have to do the hard work. We don't make the designers, the users, the designers. We have to be the designers. We have to infer this for them, and we have to start to do bits of this magic for them. And responsive design is kind of the one approach to start tackling some of that magic. These containers that bring HTML5 and therefore all these wonderful tools and technologies that let you do responsive design onto the desktop are fantastic, but we have to bring the mindset with it as well. We have to actually use those properly so that we can actually move towards this thing that I call this responsive desktop. So thank you very much for listening.